Okay, so business and human rights, I'll go as quick as I can. Here I come. So you know the objective already, right? We're going to cover UN guiding principles and UN global compacts. And then in the question time, as we have with Chris, want to talk to you, we want you to think about what we can do to lobby Australian governments, what it means to Australia. So that's the last part. UN guiding principles of business and human rights. So when businesses go overseas, it's problematic, especially when a rich country, multinationals go to developing countries where law and enforcement is weak. Then the question is whether they should do whatever local laws allow, do as they please, or they have to still behave like they would back home. So what impact? So this impact, remember this impact on the local stakeholders, that is what prompted these global guidelines to guide multinationals' behavior. So the bigger they are, the bigger impact. So guidelines talk more about negative impacts, but there's a positive impact as well. Before the military coup since 2011, multinationals like Woodside, Total, they've been doing, corporate social responsibility programs targeting at health and education, environment, doing quite well, but until the coup happened and all kind of stopped and become negative for them. So there are positive footprint as well. Okay, so before the guidelines, then the question is who is responsible if anything goes wrong? Local laws lack, and so that multinational can behave. Is that multinationals' fault or the host country's environment is to blame? Okay, so at 2011, UN guiding principles developed that solve the problem, and so we can do the work. Why is it important? Because it's unanimously endorsed and endorsed by the governments and business actors as well. Yeah. So we stop arguing over who is to blame, whose responsibilities is this. Now we have 3 principles of UN guiding principles. Because the impact is so important, I just want to spend a minute on impact to minimize adverse impact. Adverse impacts means directly and indirectly. So directly caused by investor and contributes to kind of by association and linked to, although you might not be the direct perpetrator. Okay, so that's 3 things, direct and indirect. How do we do due diligence? Chris has talked about it too. Is it possible to continue operating in Myanmar, but you have to do a heightened due diligence that involved assess the situation, the impact, act upon findings, what you find, you integrate it into company policies and allocate resources, track and monitor effectiveness, and talk to stakeholders, NGOs. So when Rio, recent case with the Jugan Gorges went wrong, that I think had to do a lot with failing to consult with or adequately consult with local stakeholders. So that's very important. And of course, number 4 is communicate and report. Now, the principal pillars of UN guiding principles. So that's 3 things: protect, respect, and remedy. So as you leave today, driving home or to Minsa, repeat: protect, respect, and remedy. Okay? Protect. Okay. Protect is for the governments, not for business. So it's a protect. State government has a duty to protect. I'm going to apply this 3 from here to Myanmar case straight away. Okay. So the principle 1 said state duty is to protect. But in the Myanmar case, after the coup, the state is the violator of human rights. Then the question is, can we then meet principle 1 and 2 for business? So that's the question I asked to Chris. He seemed to think it's still okay in some parts. So MHL and MEC are state-owned enterprises. They have to follow the country's law, and obviously they don't. So how is that going to work? You know, demilitarized is the only way, as Chris has said. So I can go quicker because he's covered some of my parts. Okay, principle 2 is now for business. Business has a corporate responsibility to respect, but seriously, not just tick a box and just do a audit. So it is a continuous process, especially when the government, the host government, is lacking in law and law enforcement. So they have to examine the impact, and stakeholders can't be worse off because of your investment footprint. In the Myanmar case, they do heightened due diligence, make sure people are not worse off. So like Total, if you keep paying money so that government can buy arms to shoot the people. So that is a very prime example of being worse off. And then you have to keep paying taxes. I didn't follow up this paying taxes with Chris because it's difficult to, it's an answer, you're there, doesn't matter wherever you are, you still have to pay tax. Yeah. So that's, you are already can't comply with this principle too. Now, another thing is that multinationals be cheeky. So they will do, they might use these philanthropic activities that they're doing, education, health, as an excuse not to pay respect to human rights, so especially under situation like this. You can already hear, oh, big companies, we gonna do humanitarian work, buy vaccines. They have money, especially oil companies, they have money to do, but then the left hand and the right hand doing opposite things. So yes, so philanthropic activities is one thing, not an excuse not to respect human rights. Principle 3 is remedy. In remedy, you have to allow victims to file their grievances, and the company has to participate in the grievance process. In Myanmar, that complaint mechanisms, for example, in garment manufacturing, you get unions, and how is that going to work? Very recently had a chat with these unionists and workers. So what happening in Myanmar is very sad, our hearts go out, is that under these circumstances, you come to work, you want to complain, say you don't get paid for overtime, okay? You want to complain, you want to have sick leave, and they will say, you want to complain? I will report to the town council that you take part in CDM, you take part in protests, we'll report and you get taken away. So even with COVID, COVID scare, or with COVID, people still go to, workers still go to work because they're scared of being reported by the factory owner, employer. So in these situations, is that still okay to operate? But then again, you need to eat, you need food, so you have to. Maybe you have to, maybe you don't have to. That is the dilemma for people like us. What do we approve? Okay, so I'm going to go to United Nations Global Compact very quickly, because these are the ethical guidelines to guide multinational behaviors. So it's a voluntary initiative by CEO company to sign in to be a signatory. There are 10 principles. Out of the 10 principles, first two principles concern human rights. Principle 1 says you have to respect. 2, if you respect 1, then you have 2 as well. But in 2, I want to spend 1 minute on that one. Complicit. Businesses should make sure that they are not complicit in human rights. So that's my question to Chris. Even if you're not directly working with the military, not directly in bed with the military, if you have some associations, if you keep providing taxes or paying rents or something, you are complicit. That means you're not, impossible to work under these circumstances. So there is a debate now. Okay, so when the coup happened, unlike the first sanction round said, don't visit Myanmar, come back, everybody pull back. This time asked 3 things. Businesses have to condemn the coup, to cut ties with the military, like Kirin already working with the military, cut ties, and heighten due diligence. I use this photo so you can see the time Rolex is there, meaning Myanmar has opened up, middle classes has risen, and a very upmarket company like Rolex is there. So unlike in the previous era, it has gone open to open. Okay, so businesses, they issue a very weak kind of collective statement by the Myanmar Center for Responsible Business, but it's short of directly condemning the coup. So instead, what they said is all the wonderful things they're doing with their philanthropic activities, as if using that as an excuse not to directly condemn, take a very strong position against the military government. So give them a little bit of chance to sit on the fence. So I was asked with BBC that what's the business is going to do, what are they going to do? Now, we've talked about their military interest by Chris. And I also wrote 2 articles. The first article was when the Adani and Australian fund happened. That was like a month before the coup. It's about, dirty business doing business with the military. And after the coup, my argument is that, for financial reasons, the coup happened. And I use the Myanmar, being a Burma, I use the Myanmar proverb to say that you can touch my head. You know how head of especially of a man is very sacred? Say, Clancy, I touch your head, but I can't take the wallet. So the wallet, so when the NLD started to threaten, there enough evidence is starting to pose threat to take financial power of military. That's when the coup was staged. So, many people's argument, including mine. As a Kirin case, Chris has talked about it. First time when the Rohingya crisis happened, Kirin was defiant. Kirin didn't want to go because they had 80% of the beer market, right? But the coup happened immediately, a few days after. They said they decided to withdraw, but then ran into a lot of problems. Woodside at that time, so it was about 2 weeks after, I think. So the CEO was interviewed, and then he said, while operating in Myanmar, Woodside has aimed to be a constructive foreign investor without directly condemning the coup. What constructive means, including, we invest in education, training, and capacity building, as if that will be forgiven for not condemning the coup, respecting human rights. In the ongoing development of Myanmar, economic stability and energy supply can play a role, starting to argue that these are the essential goods that we provide, we need to stay, but they're not even providing electricity. Total is, they're just exploring, but, to the bandwagon. And I wrote this op-ed, published in Le Monde, as a response to what the Total CEO said. We're gonna suspend, we're gonna keep paying tax. But the way he justified is interesting. You have to keep paying tax because it's a crime according to local law. You will see that in UN guiding principles, obeying local law, that's not the excuse. Okay, that's not the excuse that, local law said I have to pay and I'll pay. You still in breach of the UN guiding principles. So it's total operating business as usual. So they again use this access to energy as a fundamental right. So that's the little exit to stay away from business and human rights issues. They say, access to energy is a human rights as well. We are providing electricity, therefore, our hands are clean. And another outrageous thing it says is that human rights group will provide money to you as well as we keep paying tax. So as if we can be bought. Now, in case of Telenor, unlike Total, we want them to stay. We worried that they'll go, but then because Telenor could not comply with their human rights commitments, they had to go. Yeah, human rights commitments, they cannot, because the government started to ask them to put spyware and things, so they had to, in the end, made a decision to leave. So that's to do with sectoral differences. One's oil and one is essential services like, internet, which enable this Spring Revolution. So the sectoral differences are definitely important. So with garment, H&M and bestseller, they kind of came back, so like that. And also there's a division between unionists and the rest. Unionists are calling for foreign investment to go, comprehensive sanctions, whereas the rest are still staying with military. Because unionists, they know that workers' rights and human rights cannot be respected under these circumstances. And remember in the lobbying section, they told us don't divide, be consistent. And this is one case we haven't been consistent, that really weakened everybody's stance, sadly. And of course, you have this China factor as well. So where are we? Divisions and debate, that's where we are. That's my last slide. So first, Chris and Co will say cut ties with military, and then suddenly divided between oops, what happened? Okay, so my last slide. So yes, suddenly divided between the West and the East, and the West is still focusing on the business and human rights, whereas the East will say humanitarian reason. They need vaccines. We need to communicate. So Australia's in that sense as well. But while this debate is happening, then we have sectoral differences like, consumer goods, because they create work, we need to go in, whereas extractive sector, they have to go. So that's where the debate is. I'm going to leave it to you. And now